Hi everyone, I'm Bree. I'm 16. My mom left me when I was just a baby. I never knew her. My dad says she couldn't handle the responsibility of raising a child because she was too young. One morning, she went out to the grocery store and never came back. My grandmother raised me. My dad would visit us often, but it was my grandmother who was my real parent. The time I lived with her were the best years of my life. When I was 12, my dad remarried. His new wife had a daughter the same age. My dad took me to their house to meet them. I stayed there for one night. His new wife completely ignored me. Her daughter, Sadie, was only interested in her phone. It was pretty obvious that neither of them liked me. But I didn't care because I thought I would never have to live with them. But unfortunately, when my grandmother passed away last year, I had to move in with them. My stepmother started treating me badly from day one. She made me do all the housework. I even had to clean Sadie's room. She was incredibly mean to me. For example, during breakfast, she'd say, "Aren't you full yet? You've had enough to eat. Go take out the trash." I was really unhappy, but I didn't tell my dad about it so as not to upset him. He was working in the finance department of a big real estate developer. The finance manager transferred hundreds of thousands of dollars into his personal account. My dad didn't know anything about it, but he got arrested anyway. He didn't have the money to hire a good lawyer, so he ended up going to jail. My life wasn't going great to begin with, and when my dad went to jail, things got even worse. One day, my stepmother told me, "We're broke because of your father. You need to quit school and start working. If you want to live here, you need to bring in money." So I had to drop out of school. Of course, this rule did not apply to my stepmother's daughter. Sadie kept going to school, but I had to get a job at a call center. Since I had to deal with one stressful event after another, I got acne all over my face. I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror. The people I worked with looked at me with pity. There was this guy I liked. One day I heard him mocking me, saying, "This girl shouldn't leave the house. She has no right to make the rest of us uncomfortable." I was really devastated. I couldn't sleep that night. I cried for a long time. I wanted to go to a dermatologist, but I couldn't afford to. I was giving all the money I earned to my stepmother as soon as I got it. My acne was getting worse every day. I thought I should at least try some natural remedies. There were so many formulas for anti-acne face masks online. I picked one that used ingredients I could easily find. I just needed almond oil, apple cider vinegar, and honey. I borrowed money from a friend to buy these. That night, I made a mixture and put it on. But when I washed my face in the morning, I was disappointed to see it hadn't worked at all. My grandmother would always say, "Nature has a cure for everything." I began reading everything I could find about natural treatments for acne. For example, do you know why many formulas use apple cider vinegar? Because vinegar is very effective against bacteria and fungi. As I learned more, I started to believe I could develop my own formula. I was testing new face masks on myself all the time. Although some of them were somewhat effective, I still had acne. One day, as I was doing research, I came across some information about a plant I'd never heard of. Women in rural areas use this plant to regulate their hormones during pregnancy. I thought it could work because one of the main causes of acne is hormones. I looked all over the city and I found the dried leaves of this plant in a little shop. That evening, I prepared a new face mask using the leaves and applied it. When I woke up in the morning, I ran to the bathroom to wash my face. When I removed the mask, I was amazed. My acne was completely gone. There was someone else in the mirror. I don't usually cry much, but that morning I bawled my eyes out from happiness. Everyone at work was surprised. They asked me how I did it, but I didn't tell them my secret. I had a friend who had an acne problem like me. I had brought the mixture for her to try. I told her, "Put this on your face tonight before you go to sleep. Let's see if it works for you." Next morning, I woke up because my phone was ringing. My friend was video calling me. She was so excited. "There's not one spot left on my face. Bree, this is the magic cure. You can become a millionaire selling this stuff, and you'll deserve every penny," she said, thanking me over and over again. I had developed a plant-based formula that makes acne disappear after just one use. I thought I really could get rich. I made an Instagram account. I sent the link to my friend and asked for her opinion. She shared my Instagram account with everyone she knew. She wrote, "This worked wonders for me. Get it if you have an acne problem." That night, I made 6 sales over Instagram. The next day, I sold 13. The numbers kept growing. A month later, I was getting nearly 100 orders a day. People wanted even more, but I couldn't produce the masks fast enough. Why? Because I could only work at night so that my stepmother and Sadie wouldn't find out. During the day, I was still working at the call center. I was making a ton of money. I was hiding it all in my room because I had nowhere else to keep it. I had a teddy bear that I got from my ex as a birthday present. I took out all the stuffing and filled it with money. Then I neatly sewed it back. The money kept coming in. I bought another teddy bear. I stuffed it with money just like the other one. I kept buying more and more and ended up with 13 teddy bears in my room. I had to find another hiding place soon because having that many teddy bears didn't look normal. After a while, my worst fear came true. My stepmother called me while I was at work. I picked up the phone. "What is this money inside a teddy bear? Is that yours?" she asked. I was caught by surprise, so I said something ridiculous. My stepmother said angrily, "My friend's son had an appendectomy. Sadie saw all these teddy bears in your room. We thought we could bring one of them to the boy as a gift. While he was playing, he realized it was full of money. Whose money is this? You'll have to explain this to me tonight." I was in such a panic. I ran out of work and jumped into a cab. I was going home. If my stepmother was still at the hospital, I could move the money somewhere safe before she got back. Good plan, but where would I take it? I had an idea. There was someone I could ask for help. I called the friend who was so grateful to me for treating her acne and was thanking me every chance she got. I told her briefly about what was happening. "I'll do whatever you want. I'd be so happy to help you," she said. She paused for a moment and screamed, "I have a great idea! I have to speak with my dad right now!" I was so relieved when I got home because no one was there. 15 minutes later, my friend and her dad arrived in a huge RV. We carried the teddy bears to the RV together. My friend's dad said, "Thanks to you, my daughter got her life back. We're so grateful to you." We went to an RV park all the way across the city. My friend and her dad got in a cab and went home. Yes, this was my friend's idea. I was going to live in their RV for a while. I was feeling really good about myself because from now on, I could do whatever I wanted. I got rid of my old phone so that my stepmother wouldn't be able to reach me and got a new one. I had something important I had to do. I searched online for a lawyer and found one. I met him in his office the next day. I ended up hiring him to look into my dad's case. My stepmother wouldn't tell me where my father was being detained so that I wouldn't be able to visit him. So first off, the lawyer had to find out where my dad was. Then I went and bought a whole bunch of the ingredients I used to make the acne mask. I was going to convert the RV into a small lab. Meanwhile, the lawyer called. He found out which facility my dad was kept in. "If you want to visit him, I can come and pick you up in an hour," he said. I'd missed my dad so much. The second I saw him in his prison clothes, I started crying. The lawyer left us alone. I told my dad everything. He was so sad to hear what I'd gone through. He said, "Your stepmother never comes to visit me. I was so worried about you because I had no way of knowing how you were. I'm going to divorce her as soon as I leave this place and I'll be a better father to you," and he hugged me. Then we talked to the lawyer. He said that there wasn't enough evidence to keep my father in jail. Our lawyer turned out to be really good. He quickly found many witnesses to prove that my dad was innocent. After he got out of prison, my dad and I lived in the RV for a while. I was really rich now. We bought a 3-story house. I turned the entire top floor into a lab. I hired 4 people. Sorry, 5, because my friend who helped me out is now working with me as well. We can now produce 800 acne masks per day. My dad took some time to get himself together and then went to meet my stepmother. She started crying, saying, "I always loved Bree so much. Bring her back home. We can be the happiest family in the world." My dad said that wasn't an option anymore and that he was going to file for divorce as soon as possible. She kept saying, "I beg you, please give me a chance. I missed you and Bree so much," lying to his face. My dad yelled, "Enough! How dumb do you think we are? You're only after Bree's money," and left her right there. My stepmother is still texting my dad several times a day, but thankfully my dad finally saw her true self. He's not buying her cheap lies anymore. If you liked my story, please don't forget to like this video. Thanks so much for listening to me. See you!
Hi friends, my name is Boris. My grandfather passed away last year. He was a very successful realtor. He specialized in expensive properties. That's how he kept building his fortune year after year. He became one of the richest people in the country. He was also known for being a curmudgeon, to the point that people avoided making eye contact with him. I rarely saw him smile. He was a good man, but he had a bad temper. He became even more intolerable after my grandmother died. He seemed to be trying to take out the pain of losing his wife of 50 years on people around him. My dad has 2 siblings, both brothers. They each have 1 kid, and they're also boys. So my grandfather has 3 sons and 3 grandsons. He bought 4 houses right next to each other. He lived in one of them, and his kids lived in the others. We lived in the house closest to my grandparents. The first thing I did every morning was to visit them. We always had breakfast together. We had a special connection. Unlike my grandfather, my grandmother was very affectionate. She always told me, "Boris, you're a good kid. You're our favorite grandson. I want you to know this. Your grandfather doesn't talk about these things, but you can be sure that he feels the same way about you." Unlike me, my cousins never went to visit them. Once, my older cousin Matt said, "I've never met anyone more obnoxious than Grandpa. If I see him on the street on my way home, I go through the backyard just to avoid him." My other cousin Ben didn't like my grandfather either. He used to say that to his parents and me every chance he got. Even though my grandfather was incredibly wealthy, the only thing he did for his children was to give each of them a house. Other than that, he never gave his sons any money, but my dad never complained about this. He always told me, "Your grandfather wanted his kids to stand on their own feet." I'm grateful to him for that. He did the right thing. My cousins treated my getting along with my grandparents as a joke. They'd say, "They always give us the same gifts for our birthdays." That's how we know your sucking up to our grandfather isn't working. It used to bother me when they'd say stuff like that, but eventually I realized they were just saying it because they were jealous of me. The prospect of my grandfather leaving me his fortune made them uncomfortable. In fact, they were afraid of it. Before long, my suspicions about my cousins were proven true. My grandfather was diagnosed with lung cancer. I was the first person he told this news. One morning, I went to visit him as I always did. He looked terrible. He obviously hadn't gotten any sleep that night. He showed me his lung x-rays. "I'll soon be joining your grandmother. I should be feeling happy about that, but instead I'm afraid. Does this make me a bad husband?" he asked. That day, I saw his human side for the first time. That surly old man we were used to was replaced with a nice old man who was afraid of dying. After they found out about my grandfather's illness, my cousins started visiting him all the time. Matt, who used to avoid him, started visiting him several times a day. At first, I thought they changed their attitude because they were sad about him being sick. But soon, their true intentions became clear. They wanted to get a piece of their grandfather's fortune. One evening, Ben called me. He said, "We need to talk." When I got to the coffee shop where we were supposed to meet, Matt was there too. I was wondering what this was about. Matt jumped right in. "Boris, has Grandpa drawn up his will yet? Do you know how he's going to divide the inheritance?" I was shocked. It disturbed me so much that while he was struggling with cancer, my cousins were after his money. "I have no idea, and I don't care," I said. "In fact, I find it really odd that this is what you're thinking about right now. I don't think this is right," I went on. Ben said, "Of course you're not worried. You did everything you could to get along with Grandpa. And what about us? How are we going to get our money?" I didn't like the way he was talking. "What are you talking about? I loved Grandma and I love Grandpa. That's why I always had a good relationship with them." Matt said, "I'm really curious about what you could love about Grandpa. You're not fooling us. We know what you're up to. Do you think we're stupid?" Now this was too much. My grandfather is struggling with a terrible disease. I couldn't care less about the will or the inheritance. I just want him to live as long as possible. I don't care what you think. You only remind me of vultures, I said, and left. I wish I'd never seen their faces again after that day. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible. I visited my grandfather more often now because I wanted to spend more time with him. Every time I went over there, Matt or Ben were there. One would leave, and the other would show up. I can't even tell you how fake they were. Grandpa, I made coffee for you. Grandpa, I brought you a pillow so you'll be comfortable. Grandpa, do you want to watch a movie? I was disgusted by them because I knew what they were up to. But I wasn't about to tell my grandfather any of this. It would be so unfair to burden him with something like this. In fact, my grandfather seemed happy with what was going on. It was weird, but he was always chatting with them. I guess he had softened up since he didn't have a lot of time left. My cousins were taking advantage of this change. They were naturally very happy that he was treating them well. They were now sure that he would include them in his will. And they had probably started making plans about what to do with the money that they would inherit. One morning, what I was fearing finally happened. I knocked on my grandfather's door. He didn't answer. I rang the bell for a long time, still nothing. I guess because I was expecting this, I knew right away that we'd lost him. The next day, my cousins were already talking about money. I was right behind them at the funeral. They didn't notice that I was there. Matt said, the lawyer just called my dad. He told the whole family to come to his office tomorrow. He's going to read my grandfather's will. Ben giggled, saying, yes, we're going to be rich tomorrow. I didn't want to go to the lawyer's office. I told this to my father that night. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, your grandfather instructed his lawyer to read his will in front of the whole family. I think he donated all of his money to charity. Your uncles also think so. So tomorrow we'll all be there just as a formality. I agreed to go. Plus, it would be fun to see how upset my cousins would get once their dreams of getting rich got crushed. We were in the lawyer's office early next morning. 3 sons, 3 daughters-in-law, and of course, 3 grandsons. Ben leaned towards me. He whispered, for years, you put up with Grandpa for nothing. See, we made it to the same level as you in just 4 months. I think he even liked us more than you. We'll find out in a minute. When the lawyer took out the will, I glanced towards Matt and Ben. They were giddy with excitement. The lawyer began reading the document. My dear family, right now I'm with my beloved wife. I don't think you're going to miss an ill-tempered old man like me. I'm not going to take much of your time with this silly will business. I'll dive right in. You know, life has been very generous with me, and I've amassed a substantial fortune. My dear sons, I didn't let you live a rich man's life because I wanted you to stand on your own 2 feet. You understood me well, and you did everything on your own. I don't think you need any more money. Please continue in the same manner. I love you and my daughters-in-law very much. After the lawyer read all this, I saw my dad and my uncle smile. My older uncle said, just as would be expected of Dad. You didn't surprise us. We love you too. Our dear Dad, rest in peace. Meanwhile, Matt and Ben were holding their breath, waiting without a peep. The lawyer kept reading the will. After they found out about my illness, my dear grandsons Matt and Ben remembered that they actually had a grandfather. I have to admit that it was most entertaining to watch you falling all over me to get a slice of the inheritance. I guess you took me for a naive old man. I didn't say anything because I know I'm not easy to deal with. I see it as punishment enough for you to have acted like you liked me. The parents started laughing when they heard this. Matt's mom said, look at these little devils. We weren't even aware of this. They've been after the inheritance. Matt and Ben turned bright red. Nonsense. We were taking care of Grandpa because he was sick. They started babbling unconvincingly. We're almost done. Let me finish, the lawyer said, and kept on reading. And finally, my dear grandson Boris, you've been close to your grandmother and me since the day you started walking. I know I didn't give you enough attention, but you're a good kid. I know you will forgive me for it. Even though I know you loved us without expecting anything in return, I still want to give you a present. When you turn 18, I want you to use half of my fortune to set up a foundation and run it. The foundation is to provide scholarships for poor children and make sure they get a good education. The other half of my fortune is yours. I only have one condition. You are not to give anything to Ben or Matt, so that they learn their lesson. This was totally unexpected on my part. I was so proud that my grandfather trusted me with the responsibility of running such an organization, and I wouldn't have to work, thanks to the money he left me, which meant I could dedicate all of my time to the foundation. Needless to say, That day was a huge disappointment for my cousins. It took them a long time to get over it. Now they're both studying to get into college. My grandfather always said, "You can't take an elevator up to success. You can only reach it by climbing the stairs step by step." Yes, you can't earn anything easily by taking a shortcut. My grandfather showed this to us in a very effective way. I remember him with gratitude and respect.